well, she's a lady. Oh, she's a lady. I'm talking.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, much excitement here because we have had tremendous flooding, which has been extremely tiresome, and the less said about it, the better. And, of course, we are living in very interesting times. So, shall we start out with the celebratory and the entertaining before we get to the more dramatic, and then we get to the histrionic and just desserts? So I think let us start with Catherine at Wimbledon with Pippa and Charlotte. Didn't she look great? And did you notice the spontaneous, unorchestrated, voluntary, heartfelt, standing ovation that she got from everyone? Had Venus Williams been there, I'm sure she would have stood as well. Absolutely, no? And I suppose that one can take comfort from the fact that all of the SS, all of the Sussex squad, all of the idiots who have come up with all sorts of crazy notions about Catherine being an AI, Catherine being a corpse, you know. I mean, as if she were a Ravel Pavan to a dead Infanta. All ludicrous. And wasn't it beautiful to see what families that respect each other and are there for each other, how they behave? The interaction between Pippa and Catherine. And also, did you notice, maybe you wouldn't have noticed if you didn't see it, sorry to put it, silly me, I'm slightly distracted by what's been going on here in terms of flooding. But anyway, Catherine, when she was speaking to Carlos Alcaraz, and then she introduced him to Charlotte, and then he slightly moved away and she moved to introduce him to Pippa, and there was a misunderstanding and he moved on. How both Pippa stood back and Catherine aborted the introduction graciously. Can you imagine if it had been Meghan? She'd have been, hey, you, come on. I want to introduce you to my sister, but I don't because I don't like my sister. Well, her standing ovation was very memorable to me of Israel del Toro's standing ovation. Not like Harry's orchestrated standing ovation, where once Meghan managed to have to be on her own, she immediately bounced up, so that there was the message. My H deserves a standing ovation because he's a hero. Well, then of course we had William and George in Berlin for the Euros 2024 with King Felipe of Spain and his younger daughter, the Infanta Sofia. of course, the Spains and the Brits get on very well. Felipe used to call the late Queen Aunt Lilibet, one of the few people who was allowed to call the Queen Aunt Lilibet. His mother, Queen Sofia of Spain, was a Greek princess, a cousin of Prince Philip's, and she was named after her grandmother and Prince Philip's grandmother as well, who was Queen Sophie of the Hellenes, who was married to King Constantine I of the Hellenes, and she was Kaiser Wilhelm II's sister. And she actually could not abide her brother, and he could not abide her. And he actually was insisting that during the First World War, that Greece join the Central Powers, and neither King Constantine nor Queen Sophie wanted Greece to be anything but neutral, and ultimately he was toppled in 1917 by effectively a coup done at the behest of the French, who wanted Greece to enter the war. And one of the people who was involved in toppling him was the French minister Aristide Briand, who was the lover of Princess George of Greece, who was born Princess Mary Bonaparte. Well, that is after whom the Infanta Sofia is named. I don't know what you thought, but I thought it was very interesting how the Infanta Sofia and her father are so comfortable with each other, and she's also very comfortable with her mother. Rather casts doubt on all this unsavory confessions that Queen Letitia's brother-in-law, the ex-husband of her sister, all those phantasmagoric tales that he has been spreading around the place. But I know that the anti-monarchists in Spain would just love to take advantage of everything. But the king and the queen and the two infantas are behaving impeccably, aren't they? As indeed are Catherine and Charlotte and William and George, who, of course, were in Berlin looking at the Euros 2024. I was actually at a party in London, and I left it and was about to go back home when I saw people all over the streets. So I wound down my window and I said to someone, "So, did we win or lose?" And he said, "We lost." "Ah, I know who that is," and asked for a selfie and got one. He also asked me to say something naughty, so I did. Now we get to the rather more difficult matter of Donald Trump's attempted assassination. Well, I thought the Biden's response was very civilized and very positive, and I thought that Trump's calls for unity were very appropriate in the situation. He said that he was abandoning a speech that he intended to make and was going to make another one in the light of what had happened. But there are 6 questions that concerned people want to know the answers to. And I have been hearing some very interesting things. Now, I do not necessarily abide by conspiracy theories, but as many of you will know, there is, and has been for some time, speculation that JFK and RFK were actually removed from power by elements who were supposed to be supportive of their policies and their ambitions, and also there to protect their lives. How true that is an open question, but it is a question that people have been addressing. There is also the speculation that Richard Nixon was brought down by, I think it was Richard Helms of the CIA, because he had told Helms that he knew who had got rid of Kennedy. Again, how true that is, I don't know. American politics are a cauldron, and I would prefer not to get boiled alive by the heat of that cauldron. But what is really interesting is that this was allowed to happen, and that it happened. Now, to those of you who know, I'd better come clean. To those of you who don't know, because those of you who know might start to comment and it might create some sort of query, because my nephew by marriage was in the Secret Service, which some people know about. And I am at pains to say that I have made sure I have not spoken to my niece or her husband, because I think it is improper to take advantage of family connections and really what would be privileged information and then repeat it. So to save them any embarrassment, I haven't even been in touch with them about any of this. But I have been in touch with other people. And there are questions that are reasonable to ask. And I'm going to run through 6 quick ones. And then I'm going to quote from a certain Canadian who was a member of the Canadian military and was a part of a sniper team. First question: how did Thomas Crooks get onto the roof? There are so many people there. How did he get onto the roof? That's a question that is being asked, and I think everybody, pro or contra Trump or Biden, deserves to know. How did he get onto the roof? Number 2, since the roof was identified as a security risk, why wasn't it secured? It was very close to where Trump was going to be. They knew it was a possible site for mischief, and they left it wide open for Thomas Crooks to get onto. Number 3, why did it take so long for the snipers to dispatch Mr. Crooks? That's another question. They gave him plenty of time to finish what he had started. That's what people are saying, and they're saying it with a degree of merit, because there was no instant response, except, of course, from the security detail and the Secret Service agents around former President Trump, who, as he himself has said, behaved commendably. They were brilliant, they were quick, they were decisive, they jeopardized their lives. They were wonderful. Number 4 is, why was the building out of the security perimeter? It was acknowledged to be a security risk. Then everybody's given carte blanche to go on to it, and it's outside of the security perimeter, even though any fool, much less an expert, would have known that it was well within the danger zone. Number 5, why did no one who was responsible for Trump's security do anything after a member of the public brought the presence of the shooter to their attention? Very perplexing. I mean, there are many interpretations that can be drawn from such negligent, remiss, irresponsible, and downright dangerous conduct, or misconduct would be a better way of putting it. And number 6, why was a lone unarmed policeman permitted to investigate? And he wasn't even armed. Why wasn't he armed? Oh, the shooter points the barrel of the gun at him, and he, to save his life, because he can't shoot him, he has to scarper. At which point, Thomas Crooks opens up fire and gets off a whole load of shots. Now, Trump has been, quite rightly so, very vociferous and appreciative of the fact that, but for the grace of God, or luck, as he put it, either luck or God, he moved just enough to prevent his head being blown off. So really, somebody was looking out for him, because that was extreme good fortune. But it didn't stop Thomas Crooks from getting off. I think it was 8 shots that I think I counted. I could be wrong, but I think it was 8 shots. Well, Dallas Alexander, who for 14 years was a member of the sniper team for the Canadian military, and who has guarded all sorts of world leaders, including the Canadian Prime Minister, as indeed has my nephew by marriage, but he's an American who was a Secret Service agent, not Canadian. And as I said, I kept him well out of this, because I don't want to trade upon family and compromise his position whatsoever. But he said that, and I'm going to quote him, "I'm very familiar with the layout of these type of things and what the job should be. And yesterday what happened, I have no doubts in my mind that the shooter had help from somewhere within an agency an organization or the government. The second I saw that aerial photo of what they said happened, it immediately made no sense to me. You cannot in broad daylight get onto a roof within what looked like a couple of 100 yards, if that. It was 130 yards, so almost a half and a third less than what he says. You can't get in that position with a gun when there's a president speaking. It cannot be done. Like, you don't even have to be a sniper. It's the most, and he uses the F word, obvious thing. Most obvious place in the world, in the whole world. You could be like a 7th grader, like, what do we have to do for security? Well, let's look at these rooftops that are almost within zeroing range of a rifle. So something happened, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. Well, of course, he made sure he did, nevertheless. It's just too obvious that this guy had help getting there. And that, my dear, is the word in very, very established circles, that this was a green light. By whom is open to question, although people have been privately saying what they think, and I'm not going to repeat any of it because I do not wish to cause any problems for anybody, and I also don't wish to cause problems for myself because this situation is so incendiary. But I would hope that this is a sign to everybody that really everybody needs to get their act together and become more civilized and civil. Democracy cannot flourish when leaders are taken out because somebody doesn't like them. Too many have either been taken out or there have been attempts made to take them out. You know, in 1981, President Reagan survived an assassination attempt. Now, that was not orchestrated. That was not negligence. That was plainly somebody who was not within the inner perimeter. And he survived it. And to show you what courage really is, and élan and sang-froid, he said in 1986, when he was giving a speech in Berlin and a balloon popped, he immediately quipped, "Missed me," to wild laughter and applause. Well, I don't know whether people will agree with me or not, but I think that former President Trump's behavior since and during it has been actually very commendable. And I am also pleased to see that President and Mrs. Biden have also behaved commendably, as indeed has Mrs. Trump, because Melania Trump has been absolutely exemplary as well. And I just hope that everybody all over the world understands that this is not the way to conduct a civilized government or a civilized society. And I will end by saying that one story that is circulating is that Thomas Crooks was young, was possibly encouraged, and didn't realize that he was on a sticky wicket, that if he thought he was obliging people and that he was possibly going to somehow be regarded as a hero by certain people, I don't think he had any idea that he was very expendable, a useful idiot. And I have to say, if that turns out to be the case, the people who allowed this to happen should be swung from the highest gibbet possible, because a 20-year-old to be used like that would be truly appalling. Peggy Mayhaffer says, "Hello, Lady C. Thank you for your most entertaining and edifying videos. Thank you. I love them and never miss a single one." Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if the Invictus patronage was ever to be taken away from Prince Harry. How well do you think he would cope? It's the only thing that gives him any credibility or earns him any praise that he somewhat deserves. I think it is the only thing that gives him any real sense of self-worth. Do you think it will ever happen? If so, who would make the decision? Is there a board that would have to make the decision, or perhaps a CEO? And would they dare to do that to the king's son and risk offending him? Why do you think they'd be offending him? I make that point for what it's worth. Maybe when William becomes king, they would do it. If they finally have had enough of Harry and his wife getting in on the glory when she has absolutely nothing to do with the games. Personally, I can't imagine it will ever happen. But what do you think the chances are? If the sight of Meghan marching in her shorty shorts, showing off her skinny chicken legs in front of the veterans was not enough to do it, what could be? Much love to you and your beautiful sweet girls. I adore them. Thank you very much. Woof woof from them. Well, will the Invictus Games be taken away from Prince Harry? It's always a possibility. The king has nothing to do with it. It would be the people who run Invictus Games itself. They're the ones who have the right. He's just a patron. He's a royal patron, but he's a patron. Yes, as a courtesy, they would inform the palace. The king would certainly be informed, as would Prince William. It is the last chance saloon. If it happens, it means that the game really is up for Harry. And there are people within the royal fold, within the charity, who would actually like to continue bending over backwards to give Harry every chance of future, if not rehabilitation, then present dignity. And it is all he has going for him. I actually do not think that it's useful to predict whether it will happen or it won't. What I will say is that certain knowledge, people within the military for some time have been disquieted by Harry's presence as the patron of the Invictus Games and the dog and pony show that he and Meghan resort to. And Admiral Lord West's comments were very representative of the fact that he has very little support for remaining as patron. That doesn't mean he has none. And I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not going to predict anything. What I would say is, I hope he's stripped of his patronage. That's what I'll say. I hope. I'm not going to say anything about prediction, just hope. C. Logue says, Harry has a mental illness. The royal families have known this for 20 plus years. Diana had a mental illness, and the royals understand it's hereditary. Harry needs 24/7 care, one of the reasons for headstrong. That's a very interesting comment to make, because certainly the awareness has been in royal circles that Harry is challenged, to be polite, and people certainly knew and regarded Diana as having been mentally ill. And Harry, yes, I think there are many people in the royal circle who do think he's mentally ill or ill with mental manifestations. Let's put it that way. That's partly why he has so far not been stripped of Invictus. They don't want to push him over the edge. Now, there are many people who think that Meghan would love the opportunity to wear black and play the Merry Widow. But there are many people also who don't want Harry to ever endow Meghan with such a photo op and the role of a lifetime. So it's not only to preserve Harry, it's to prevent Meghan. I hope that answers the question. Susan Hinske says, Harry said ages ago that there's a way to get round anything. That's absolutely right. Harry and Meghan are firmly of the belief that boundaries apply to other people, rules apply to other people, and no matter what, any obstacle that's put in his way or any preventative, he will find a way around it, and he can, and he does. Well, of course, he was encouraged by his mother. Doesn't matter what you do, just make sure you don't get caught. That's a short step from that to, well, I got caught, and what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to continue doing what I want. And if you don't like it, you just have to lump it. Elena says, thank you, Lady C. In 2013, there was a devastating attack on Camp Bastion. 2 Marine soldiers dead and 17 coalition soldiers seriously wounded, and 8 American aircraft worth more than £124 million were also destroyed. And yet Harry slept through the whole attack. The documents, Major General Sturdevant is quoted as having said, quotes, the night of the attack, he slept through the entire attack. He also said there was a safe place to move Harry to, but because he slept through the attack, it wasn't needed. Is this the actions of a hero? And he must be one hell of a sound sleeper to sleep through that, don't you think? Well, is that the actions of a hero? Well, a hero can be a sound sleeper. So if nobody woke him up, I don't think it's the mark of anything except somebody who was very chilled. And you know, Harry was in Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, I feel a head cold coming on, by the way. In Afghanistan, there were all sorts of mendicants that soldiers and others could take to calm their nerves and to avail themselves of. Now, of course, this didn't happen very often with many soldiers because there were tests and the soldiers had to pass the tests. But Harry might have taken a sleeping tablet, or maybe he just sleeps soundly. Maybe he has such a clean conscience that he would sleep through hell and perdition. I think the fact that not only he slept so soundly, but that nobody woke him up, says a lot. Let's leave it at that. Pam Eliza says, "Thank you, Lady C, for bringing us informative and important broadcasts every single time." Thank you. I'm glad you think so. This whole subject has further opened my eyes to the connections between fame, fortune, media, and money. We've always known it exists, but the horrifying actions of these two have brought it to the forefront for so many people like me, thanks to people like you. Everyone, stay the course and don't give up hope. Justice won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Pam Eliza, thank you very much for that. I think that there is always a principle behind every action and every situation. And I think constructive and positive people try to be good. Number one, good before bad, right before wrong, rectitude before its opposite. Let's leave it at that. And I agree with you. Don't give up hope. We are at some point going to come. There will be a denouement. Let me put it that way. There will be a denouement. And the longer this drags on, is the more Harry and Meghan make themselves unpopular. And they are not going to be able to enjoy the fruit of divisiveness the way they have hitherto done, because we are entering an age where harmonious conduct is always preferable to the alternative. Barbara Perkins says, ESPN piped in applause and the vocal bravos to enhance the crowd response. noticed nobody's mouth was moving and their clapping was lackluster. So that chair was not the audience. But it was also to cover the boos. It was pre-planned. Harry was just for viewers and ESPN was prepared to cover for his detractors. Hope ESPN failed to get viewers. Well, it was the second lowest rating of the show. There were only 1.21 million viewers. So the cynical exercise of getting true royalty my head cold is just bothering me. Getting true royalty, or actual royalty, or however Serena Williams put it, didn't work. On the contrary, I'm sure Marie Shenton is now absolutely regretting that Harry and Meghan, but Harry especially, were ever a part of any of this. And remember, her links with him go back to 2013. So, Elizabeth H. says, the duo also left before the ceremony was over. Obviously, they had no interest in the other recipients or audience, since they walked out from the front of the auditorium. Well, my information, which I shared with you the other day, was that there were huge behind-the-scenes problems, and Harry was really distraught and upset about the reaction to his presence. And Meghan, tungsten Meghan, just brazened it out. But Harry found it more difficult to brazen it out. And I am told he was jabbering like a wreck before and was in tears afterwards, as well as tears of the fury, I would imagine, as well as disconsolate at how he is being perceived, because make no mistake about it, both Harry and Meghan are very aware of the fact now that they are loathed all over the world by too many people, and those who don't loathe them disrespect them and disparage them and think they are little better than jokes. You know, some people are saying that Meghan and Harry left early because that's royal protocol and the Queen always left early. That's absolutely untrue. The Queen never left, nor does the present King or the present Queen. They don't ever leave anything early. It is the height of discourtesy to leave something early. It is a total fiction to suppose that Harry and Meghan left early because it was royal protocol. It was the cowards making sure that they did not have to endure more booing than actually took place. Such as existed was so slight that it could be covered up. But evidently, when they left, they were both roundly abused. He was told to go back to England. She was told she's not the Princess of Wales. And they arrived to in such a way that they wouldn't run the gauntlet, and they left in such a way that they could sneak out. But it was discourteous because the show was going on. The show was actually going on. And did you notice how Venus Williams just looked at them with absolute scorn, as if she was looking at something truly distasteful? And when they orchestrated, because I don't call people who are forced to stand up, I don't call a standing ovation. And a lot of people in the audience didn't stand up. And certainly Venus Williams sat down with a face that was, the expression was glowering. Certainly nothing, and she didn't clap. What does that tell you? I know what it tells me. Colette Hefferon says, too scared to get booed on the way out, so had to sneak out. That's right. That's right. And I understand he was disconsolate. Well, I mean, you actually almost have to feel sorry for him, because everything they have done since their marriage has ultimately backfired. Even the Australian trip backfired. Anything that seemed as if it was going to be positive has backfired. They do realize, I am told, that they are in an invidious position. And I think on some level they must understand that their actions are playing a part in this. No matter how delusional someone is, there has to be a kernel, even the tiniest 0.01% of that individual has to acknowledge the fact, hang on a second, I am the common denominator in all of this. Maybe they obviously then do lie to themselves and say, oh, well, it's people who are orchestrating things against us, blah, 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 blah. But you know, no amount of denial can rescue them from the absolute humiliation that they have to be enduring. I actually feel sorry for them. I think it's justly deserved. And I wish they'd stop it. I actually wish they'd get treatment for their conduct and turn their act around, let's put it that way. But you know, no amounts of defensive deflection is ever going to take the sting out of such humiliation as they have to be enduring. But they are back for more tomorrow, delusional in the belief that if they brazen it out long enough, people are going to think that black is white. Douglas Williams said, is it correct that Israel del Toro, who stood on the stage with Harry, had not long before strongly criticised both Invictus and Harry and Meghan for misuse of funds, using huge amounts for a luxury lifestyle for H&M rather than helping needy veterans? This was in his acceptance speech for the award he received just before. I am afraid, Douglas Williams, I think that is misreportage. cannot find any such speech by Israel del Toro. I think it is the height of mischievousness, and I think it is deplorable conduct for commentators to make up lies of this nature and put them in anybody's mouth, especially in the mouth of a fine, upstanding veteran like Israel del Toro. I would doubt very much that Israel del Toro would be sufficiently undignified as to criticize Harry in the terms that he is supposed to have done. I see no evidence of it, and I think that you should not be deceived by such disgusting reportage. And may I make the point as well that there are only two explanations as to how such truly awful, untrue stories can come into being. Either it is Harry and Meghan's supporters trashing them in the hope of presenting them as victims and orchestrating false narratives so that freedom of speech will be threatened by Harry and Meghan's attempts to curtail it and amend the First Amendment of the United States of America. Either that, or they are just crass, vulgar, dreadful, opportunistic liars who are jumping on a bandwagon. Whether it is the Sussex Squad or people who invent things like that, they are to be deplored at all times. I hope I make my position clear. And I'm going to wrap up with a few comments because I think they say an awful lot and they say what I would say, but I see no point in raining on anybody's parade. Sharon Mack, who's British, says, Harry said in his speech about not leaving people behind, what about the Centibali baby girl that you said that you would look after, Harry? She lives in poverty with her grandmother. Empty words, Harry, just empty words. And others, not just that. Colette Hefferon says, or the Bakar people. Driftwood Lover says, and the poor victims affected by the African Park scandal, they asked him for help. Guess he did leave many behind, as we well know. Harry and Meghan do not see any merit in reconciling words with deeds. They think that they are so splendid and wonderful. They are so delusional, because they really are delusional, that they think that they can just plough through the ever-increasing fusillade of observation that warrants acknowledgement of how appallingly they behave and what appalling values they represent to many people. They think they can just brazen it out. Well, let us see how they end up continuing to brazen it out, because I personally think that they are rapidly running out of supporters. And I'm going to end with the best for the last. Being naughty. My understanding is that Harry and Meghan's marriage is hanging on by a shoestring. That Harry has become increasingly disturbed by the fact that his reputation has tanked to the extent that it has, and that how true this is, I need to make a disclaimer about for legal reasons. But I have been told by somebody who I feel has their finger sufficiently on the pulse for it to be worth listening to, that Harry has become increasingly perturbed and disillusioned because he has begun to see for himself that all Meghan's machinations result in trouble and strife, and that all that she promised him, oh, I can liberate you, we can end up having the most wonderful life together, look how popular we are, look how everybody in the royal family and the royal institution is holding us behind. Let's go to California. Trust me, baby. Everything's going to be fine. We're going to be the most popular couple on earth. We're going to make a shed load of money. We're going to be billionaires. And I know that you didn't think that you wanted to be a billionaire, but you rarely did. Just as how you didn't think you wanted to be free, but you rarely do. And so I'm going to imprison you with promises and hope and expectation. And it's all come to naught. And I understand that this latest incident will have added another nail in the coffin of the trust Harry once had in Meghan. He used to think that he could turn everything over to Meghan, and it would amount to brilliance, and she would be able to wave her magic wand, because she'd been waving that magic wand in ways that I have to tell you. When Harry met Meghan, the delights were just so superb. He used to follow her around, his eyes like a puppy dog. Oh, please, 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 please. And at the palace, they used to call him blowing in the wind Jobs, and we can drop out in the wind. Harry, for the fact that he was clearly in love with Dave Brubeck and Stan Getz and such masterpieces as Blowing in the Wind. Well, evidently, things have been hitting buffers for a while, and I am reliably informed that what has gone on in the run-up to this and consequent to their little foray to the Dolby Theatre is yet more lessening of Harry's regard for Meghan. Let us see, because I also am told he's terrified of her. But How terrified can you be of someone who you begin to realize has not fed you from a fresh spring, but from a poisoned chalice? And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, may I ask you to keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. And as I would like to point out, it can be on anything. The more subjects, the better. Old favourites, but we can also develop new favourites, can't we? And on that note, I'll say, take good care. Keep the questions and comments coming in, please. And Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and goodbye.